The story you're about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts about historical characters, events, or locations. Please sit back and listen as I narrate this story to you. A cryptic group in Japan blackmailed the country's largest candy companies for a year and a half. They stocked supermarket shelves with cyanide-laced chocolates. They wrote elaborate teasing letters about their exploits, which were published in national newspapers. They consistently thwarted the efforts of the country's police force. To this day, no one knows who they were. From 1984 to 1985, the Glico Morinaga case was a well-known extortion case in Japan, primarily directed at the Japanese industrial confectioneries Ezaki Glico and Morinaga, and it is still unsolved. The entire case lasted 17 months, beginning with the kidnapping of Glico's president and concluding with the last known communication from the prime suspect, a person or group only known as the Monster with 21 Faces. Back in 1984, the company sold everything from ice cream to hamburger meat, but its sweets, which included Puchin puddings, Pocky chocolate, and Glico caramels, were all made with health-boosting oyster glycogen. On March 18, 1984, around 9 p.m., two masked men broke into the house next to Ezaki Glico president, Kazuhisa Ezaki, who had returned home from a long day at the office, removed his suit, and sunk into a warm bath. Ezaki had just completed his second year as president of Ezaki Glico, a multi-million-dollar corporation based in Osaka. Ezaki had only been in the tub for a few minutes when he heard a commotion elsewhere in the house. Two armed hooded men stormed into the bathroom and began dragging him out of the tub. He initially thought it was a burglary, but when he was dragged out of his home and abducted, he realized it wasn't. He attempted to call for assistance, but his kidnappers were 2 steps ahead of him. They had already bound Ezaki's wife and children, and they had also broken into the house next door, where his mother lived, and bound her as well. They broke into the executive's neighboring home after stealing the key. They had also cut the house's phone lines. The man pushed Ezaki out of the door, handed him a coat and a ski hat, and drove him to an isolated warehouse in Ibaraki, Osaka. While he was being kidnapped, his kidnappers got to work. 3 hours later, another Glico executive received a phone call in which a stranger instructed him to go to a specific phone booth to obtain a ransom note. The letter demanded a large sum, 1 billion yen, which is approximately $4.5 million in 1984, and 100 kilograms of gold, which is 222 pounds. He was given juice and crackers to eat. To keep him quiet, the 2 ski mask-wearing kidnappers informed Ezaki that his 8-year-old daughter was also being held captive. They also pointed 2 weapons at him. Detectives were just getting started on leads when Ezaki managed to escape his warehouse prison after only 2 days in captivity before anyone paid the ransom. Everyone hoped that the perpetrators would be apprehended and that this would be the end of the matter. Then, all over Japan, newspaper offices began receiving copies of a strange letter. It was addressed to the police, implying that if they were professionals, they would have apprehended the kidnappers by now. The letter was published in the newspapers. They also published its follow-ups over the next few months. There were dozens of them, all filled with taunts, jokes, and more useless clues. Some were mostly used to provoke the cops. Others disclosed additional potential crimes. In one, sent in mid-May, the gang claimed to have laced several packages of Glico candy with cyanide. They didn't specify which kind. The extortion attempts against Glico did not end with Ezaki's escape. Vehicles in the parking lot of the Ezaki Glico headquarters trial production building were set on fire on April 10. Then, on April 16, a plastic container containing hydrochloric acid was discovered in Ibaraki along with a threatening letter addressed to Glico. On May 10, Glico began receiving strange letters from a person or group who signed them Kaiji Naijuichi Menso, which roughly translate to the Monster with 21 Faces, after the villain of Edogawa Rampo's detective novels, and has also been translated as the Mystery Man with the 21 Faces and the Phantom with the 21 Faces. The Mystery Man claimed to have mixed potassium cyanide soda into Glico candies. When Glico removed its products from the shelves at great expense, resulting in a loss of more than 21 million, and the layoff of 450 part-time workers, the company's assets plummeted and they were forced to lay off 1,000 workers. Glico had the candy tested and it all came back negative, but it was too late to save Glico's reputation. The monster with 21 faces threatened to sell tainted goods in stores. Following these threats, a security camera caught a man wearing a Yomiuri Giants baseball cap placing Glico chocolate on a store shelf. After this incident, a security camera photo was made public. Their letters were also written in a dialect associated with Osaka, Japan's third largest city and a low-key anti-capital. In contrast to the formality of standard Japanese, Osaka slang allows for warmth, sincerity, and humor. Eventually, the monster stopped contacting Glico and on June 26 issued a letter saying, "The president of Glico has already gone around with his head hanging down long enough. We would like to forgive him." Finally, they made a promise. Japan has gotten terribly hot and humid, so when our work is done, we want to go to Europe. We'll be in one of those places. Let's bring Pucky, the traveler's friend. Delicious Glico products, we're eating them too. See you in January of next year. The Morinaga portion of the Glico Morinaga case began in September 1984 when the monster with 21 faces demanded money from the Morinaga Candy Company. They demanded $400,000 for their services. When Morinaga refused to comply, they issued another threatening letter increasing the stakes. In an October letter, the group stated, "We've added some special flavor. The taste of potassium cyanide is somewhat bitter." They claim to have left 20 boxes in stores from Hakata to Tokyo containing cyanide-laced candies. But they added, "Don't worry, they'd left a note on the boxes." Sure enough, police discovered boxes of Morinaga chocoballs and angel pies labeled "Danger, contains poison. You'll die if you eat this." Signed as the Mystery Man with 21 faces. To everyone's surprise, the candy tested positive for cyanide this time. Morinaga's stock dropped by 22 cents as a result. Further letters threatened that if supermarkets did not immediately boycott Morinaga, new boxes would appear, this time unlabeled. The police department was mobilized like never before. 40,000 officers, 20% of Japan's total force, spent several weekends in a row staking out supermarkets, noting that the Mystery Man usually strikes on Saturdays and Sundays. They combed through surveillance footage from one of the supermarkets, which showed a man with curly hair, a baseball cap, and glasses placing something on a shelf. They tracked down the origins of the typewriter used to write the letters. They released audio from a blackmailing phone call to Morinaga, which featured a woman and a child demanding money, and even set up special phone lines for people to call in and listen to it. Every lead, however, went cold, leading to more mockery. This resulted in massive losses, not only monetary but also in terms of reputation. The Mystery Man continued to send mocking letters and demand money from other food companies, including 100 million yen from Fujiya Corporation and 50 million from Surugaya. Morinaga and Company, whose food products have been poisoned by the criminal gang, was also forced to reduce its current production by 90% on November 7, 1984. However, police did get close to the suspected mastermind of the monster with 21 faces. On June 28, 2 days after agreeing to stop harassing Marudai in exchange for 50 million yen, which is approximately $210,000, the monster arranged for a Marudai employee to toss the ransom money into a local train bound for Kyoto when a white flag was displayed. An investigator disguised as a Marudai employee and following the monster's drop instructions, noticed a suspicious man observing him while riding a train to the drop point. The man was described as a large, well-built man wearing sunglasses, his hair cut short and permed, with eyes like those of a fox. The undercover cop and the fox-eyed man both disembarked from the train at Kyoto Station when the white flag was not displayed, and while the investigator waited on a bench, the fox-eyed man continued to observe him. Later, the investigator returned to Osaka, while the fox-eyed man boarded another car on the same train. When the investigator disembarked at the Takatsuki Station, the fox-eyed man boarded a Kyoto-bound train and another undercover investigator followed him, but the fox-eyed man eventually lost him. On November 14, the monster group attempted to rob the House Food Corporation of 100 million yen in another secret deal, giving police a second chance at the Fox-eyed man. Investigators saw the Fox-eyed man, who was wearing a golf cap and dark glasses, at a rest stop on the Maishin Expressway near Utsu, but he eluded capture once more. The cash delivery van they were following continued on its way to the drop point, where the money was to be placed in a can covered by a white cloth. The white cloth was present when the delivery van arrived at the drop location, but the can was not. As a result, the investigative team was instructed to leave, believing that the drop was an evaluation by the monster of police response. An hour earlier, however, a patrol car from the Shiga Prefecture Police had spotted a station wagon with its engine running but no headlights. The station wagon was also only about 50 meters away from a white cloth suspended from a fence. Unaware of the hidden ransom drop, the police officer approached the station wagon and shone his flashlight on the driver, revealing a thin, chic man in his 40s wearing a golf cap over his eyes and, more importantly, a wireless receiver with headphones. Surprised by the officer, the driver sped away with the police car pursuing him until the station wagon lost him. The station wagon was later discovered abandoned near Kusatsu Station, having been stolen earlier in Nagaokakyu, Kyoto Prefecture. Inside the abandoned car was a radio transceiver that had been listening in on radio communications between police officers from 6 prefectures, including the drop points prefectures of Osaka, Kyoto, and Kobe. A vacuum cleaner was also recovered, though no evidence could be linked to the monster group. Following the blackmail campaign against the House Foods, the monster moved on to Fujiya in December 1984. The Fox-eyed man's facial composite was made public by police in January 1985. Shuji Yamamoto, the head of the Shiga Prefecture Police, doused himself in kerosene and set himself on fire in August 1985, blaming himself and his subordinates for failing to capture the mystery man during the stakeout. On August 12, 5 days after Yamamoto's death, the monster with 21 faces sent out their final letter. It read, in part, "No career Yamamoto died like a man. So, we decided to give our condolence. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life. Mystery man with 21 faces." They vanished with that. The monster with 21 faces was never seen or heard from again after receiving this message. The statute of limitations on the assault and kidnapping of Ezaki expired in January 1995, and the statute of limitations on the charge of attempted murder for the poisoned food products expired in February 2000. One possible link was an earlier incident in 1955 when Morinaga dried milk was responsible for accidental arsenic poisoning in Japan, resulting in at least 130 deaths. Many of the 13,420 surviving victims would suffer from long-term health issues. This incident could have been a personal tragedy for the members of the Phantom with 21 faces, providing them with motivation to launch their anti-corporation campaign. Following the release of the identikit in January 1985, Manobu Miyazaki was quickly identified as the perpetrator by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. Miyazaki was suspected of issuing a 1976 tape declaring support for a local union in a labor dispute with Glico that bore similarities to the numerous declarations of the monster with 21 faces. He was labeled as Mr. M or Material Witness M. Between 1975 and 1976, there were numerous whistleblowing incidents that were also attributed to Miyazaki, which highlighted Glico's dumping of starches and other industrial waste into the local river and drainage system. Miyazaki was also suspected of being involved in a union leader's resignation due to accounting irregularities when Glico Ham and Glico Nutritional Foods merged. Furthermore, his father was the leader of a local Yakuza group, and Miyazaki resembled the Fox-eyed man. For months, people speculated that Miyazaki was the Fox-eyed man until the Tokyo Metropolitan Police investigated his alibis and cleared him of any wrongdoing. Miyazaki became a social commentator as a result of his notoriety, and he wrote a book about his experiences called Topamono. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police suspects that various Yakuza groups were involved in the Glico Morinaga case as well. The blackmail campaign came to an end around the time of the Yamaichi War, a gang war between the Yamaguchi-gumi and the Ichiwakai. Furthermore, the Japanese National Public Safety Commission investigated extreme left-wing and right-wing groups as potential suspects. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took time out of your day to listen to my narration. This is Nikki of Twysted Mind, and I'd like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Salamat!